Let's see. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Torah. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for tuning in. And here I am, Rabbi Anibal, your host. And hopefully, we're going to have a fun time studying this week's Parsha Bereishit. Finally, we go back to the beginning of everything. And interesting. I'm going through the chat, and I realized that for some reason YouTube is not showing me your names anymore, but your ID. So let me give you an example. Like Brenda, you used to be Brenda Grossman, and now you are at Brenda Grossman 2352, right? Same with Shelly. Shelly, you are for me 54 Church. I guess that's why I'm taking here an educated guess of who is who. Yeah, at David Grossman 9165. That's your ID, by the way, even if you're not aware of that. So I cannot see your names. Paul Rainer 3197. Hello, Holly. You see, Holly Mandelkern 9367. That's your name. Um, yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why. It's a new thing for YouTube. Even when I program the streams and stuff like that, everything is different now. So once in a while, I have to relearn everything. Not fun, let me tell you. Not fun to do that because I know exactly what I'm expecting from the streams. Like I have to deactivate certain things for security reasons and to activate some other things. And they keep changing things on me, I guess on everybody. And so once in a while, I have to go back and relearn everything. Okay. So anyway, okay. So as I mentioned before, we are going to study a little bit about the Parshat Bereishit. This is something I taught a few years back, but I thought it was a good time to bring it again. It's about a little bit of the mystic aspect of the creation. That is something that is very important to understand, even if you're not into Kabbalah so much. And it's yeah. Shelly Chochinov, you say Windows 10 or Windows 11? No, my friend, this is a Mac. Mac, this Mac OS 26.0.3, I believe. The new one, the latest one from Apple. Yeah, I'm using a MacBook Pro. During COVID, I switched from Windows to Mac, and I think it was in general a good move. Well, welcome Felix Felinus. We don't know your name, but I guess Felix Felinus is fine for now. Um, yeah. Well, I'm gonna give people 2 more minutes before we start with the class. I want everybody at the beginning, when I present the first topic, my first thing, in the meanwhile, you can chat among yourself. You can tell me about your day. You can tell me where you are connecting from. You can tell me your real names if you want. And also, you can go for coffee. You know me by now. This is Trollheim with a good coffee. And when I say good coffee, it has to be espresso based. Okay? Filter sometimes is good, but depends on the quality of the beans. But for espresso, I have my Nespresso machine in the back. And I always, yeah. Oh, Felix, you are Lori Batel. Welcome, Lori. Good to put a name to the ID. Okay, hopefully I will remember in the future, Lori. If I don't remember, somebody else from the class will remember. I'm sure. I'm sure. Yes. Yes, Paul Rainey. I can read your name, Paul. I don't know how to pronounce the town, but I've seen it the other day. I think going through Steinbach, I have to cross by. No? Yeah. Espresso and learning, says Brenda. And yes, Amparo, did I say hello to you? Welcome, Amparo. Um, yeah. Felix, you live, Lori, sorry, Lori, 2 hours north of Houston. Nice, nice. Okay, so let's begin with the class. With the beginning of everything. What do I mean with the beginning of everything? This week we read Parshat Bereishit. Actually, we already read a little bit about read a little bit of Bereishit during Simchat Torah. Okay, Simchat Torah. Um, and it's interesting, and I mentioned this during Simchat Torah, that the other thing that we read in Simchat Torah is the parsha called Vezot Abracha. The difference is, Vezot Abracha, the last portion of the Torah, is read only in the whole length of the parsha, only in Simchat Torah. Okay? But Bereishit is read on Simchat Torah, but then on the Shabbat after. So, Vezot Abracha does not have a Shabbat. It's the only one. And it's a problem for people who only come on Shabbat mornings to synagogues, so they never get the chance to hear the whole Vezot Abracha. So you have to come on Simchat Torah, but I know sometimes it's complicated because one is in the evening, the other one is usually during the week. So it's something that people are not familiar. Maybe 1 year I should dedicate the class just to Vezot Abracha, because it's the least actually studied parsha for that reason, because it's never part of Shabbat morning service. So you will never have B'nai Bnot Mitzvah talking about that in the Divrei Torah and on their speeches and so forth. Okay. So Holly, you are in Winter Park, Florida. Jacksonville, Florida. Is Randy. Okay, yeah. I'm going to Florida in November. I will be in Sarasota, Florida for a few days, doing a wedding, by the way. Sarasota, flying to Tampa and then going to Sarasota from there. So I accept suggestions of what to do, what to visit, because I will have a little bit of time off. So it will be cool. It will be cool to do something. I'm already exploring the shuls there and things. So yeah, I'll be in Florida very soon. Very soon. Okay. So let's begin with the class. I'm saying it's the beginning of everything, and I'm gonna show you here. It's the beginning of the Torah. It's the beginning of the creation of the world, and there is something very interesting that some rabbis consider this section of the Torah irrelevant for the Jewish people in general because it does not have any halachot, any Jewish law, because remember, all the mitzvot, specifically for the Jewish people, begin with the book of Exodus. Specifically with the Exodus itself, when God said to the Jewish people, this will be for you the first month. And that is considered the first global mitzvah for the Jewish people. The things that we do learn from the book of Genesis are the circumcision, okay? And the other thing that is very important, that is that because God created the world, God has the power to assign a land to any people that God may choose. And that is usually a way to understand why we need the book of Genesis, in the sense that it explains that God gave the land of Israel to the Jewish people, God being the owner of the entire world. So that is one thing. But again, the other thing is very important from the book of Genesis is circumcision, and the other one is the prohibition of eating the blood from when we slaughter an animal. That we are going to see a few of those things after the Exodus on the laws that God gave to Noah, and there is the first time that human beings are allowed to eat meat. Before, there is not such a thing. In fact, at the very beginning of the creation, you will see that it seems to imply that human beings were vegetarian. Okay? Anyway, we are not going to go into that today, but we are going to study the very beginning of the Torah, because it's incredible how much information or how many teachings we can extract just from one single verse. In fact, some people said that even the first word of the Torah, Bereishit, in the beginning, we can do, a class just on that word alone. In fact, I will say that I could teach an entire class just on the first letter, that is the letter Bet in Hebrew, Bereishit, the Bet, which is the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which is very interesting that the Torah begins with the second letter and not with the first letter, because that will be a very cool thing if the Torah begins with the letter Aleph, right? Which represents the number one, but it begins with the letter Bet that represents the number two. Why is that? And well, it's because if there is one thing that is the signature of this world where we live, is it's called that this is the world of duality. Everything is dual in this world. Everything is dual or more, but at least dual in this world. We will see. Let me explain. Just here out of the bat, at the beginning of the Torah reading, where it says, Bereishit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created heavens and earth. Boom, the duality. Two things. Why this is important to understand that the world started with the letter Bet, and the letter Bet represents number two, and two represents duality? Because before creation, the number two didn't exist. Let me know if it starts getting too complicated, but it's the concept of the two or the three or the four, the multiplicity did not exist before the creation of the world. The world needed to be created for duality to exist. What was there before creation? Just God. Just God and nothing else outside God. So the only thing that existed before creation was the one with capital T. Okay? Let me know if you understand what I'm saying. This is very important. This is very important to understand the concept of duality and the number one and the number two and all that. Okay, welcome Judy. I just saw your name here, and thank you everyone for welcoming to the United States. Hopefully, I will have a good time. Like everybody, every time I go, I have a good time in the United States. I always get I keep getting surprised, but I shouldn't by now. Every time that I go to the hotel, and the first thing you see outside the hotel, instead of the welcome to the hotel, is no guns. Right? That you don't find that in Canada. For all of you, for some of you that may never been in Canada, that is not something that you will find in a hotel. You may find the sign that says "Do not smoke," but not the no guns here. It's just the first thing that always shocks me when I go to the States is, oh, I'm in the United States when I see that that sign here. Okay, so again, Bereishit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created heaven and the earth, and we learn about the concept of duality. Now, listen what Rashi will say. Is what I explain of why some rabbis believe that for us Jews to canonize the book of Bereishit, to include it into the Bible, was a very interesting concept because of this. Let me read for you. It was not necessary to begin the Torah except from this month is to you the first month, blah, 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 blah. Exodus 12:2. Why? Because this is the first commandment that the Israelites, Jewish people, were commanded. For the main purpose of the Torah is its commandments. And although several commandments are found in Genesis, as I mentioned before, like circumcision or the provision of eating the tithe sinew or the blood and blah, 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 they could have been included together with the other commandments. Now, for what reason did God commence with in the beginning? Because of the verse, the strength of his works, he related to his people to give them the inheritance of the nations. And this is Rashi quoting a verse from the book of Psalms that he's going to explain right away why he's quoting that verse. Okay, And he says, "For if the nations of the world should say to Israel, 'You are robbers, for you conquered by force the lands of the 7 nations of Canaan,' the land of Canaan, they will reply, 'The entire earth belongs to the Holy One, blessed be He. He created it.'" This we learn from the story of creation, and that's why it's so important to canonize the book of Genesis. "And gave it to whomever He deemed proper. When He wished, He gave it to them, and when He wished, He took it away from them and gave it to us as a promise." Okay? Because we are going to learn also in the book of Genesis, the land of Israel was given to the Jewish people as a promise. And with God promises something, that promise can never be broken. And this is something that we learn from God in the sense that there is a mitzvah, it's a commandment for us as Jewish people to never break a promise. No matter the circumstances, no matter the disappointments, you never break a promise. Okay, this is very important and it's a very Jewish concept. We never break a promise unless, if it's a promise that we made to God, we may have a way out. We may have a way out. We have for that the Kol Nidre every year, but not a promise that we make to another person. It's a great sin to break a promise, and we learn it from God that when God promises something, it can never be annulled. God cannot change His mind. Let's put it that way. When it's something positive, when it's something negative, when it's a punishment or something, we learn this through the prophets. That if we change our behavior, something negative could be reverted. When something positive, like to say the land of Israel is yours, that could never be reverted. And we need the book of Genesis to understand that concept. Okay, so it's very interesting that's why, according to Rashi at least, and Rashi never brings anything new. Rashi is always repeating stuff that he learned. Okay, so this is something that is fundamental in Jewish thought, the understanding of why we need the book of Genesis. On top of that, beyond the mitzvot, and we're going to see that in a minute, beyond the commandments, the book of Genesis is telling us a lot about ourselves. Okay? What does it mean that it's telling us a lot about ourselves? It's telling us a lot about the world where we live. Is telling us a lot about human nature, and we are going to say that we are going to learn that when we study the story of the creation of Adam and Eve, and the fact, for example, that they had only one commandment. I don't know if you realize that, guys, that Adam and Eve, they had one, actually what? Maybe they have two commandments. Because purvu, be fruitful and multiply. But let's put it that way. Adam and Eve, they have one restriction. Okay? Among the commandment, he has one restriction. What was the restriction that they had? You can eat from any fruit that you want except for that one. That was the only restriction they have. We don't read in the Torah any other restriction that God gave to them. They had only one restriction. What did they do? They went and break that only restriction that they had. And we know in Judaism that we break a commandment. What do you do? Hatati, right? I sin, sorry. We pray to God, we ask for forgiveness, and then we get the forgiveness from God because God is a loving God. But we learn from the story that that's not what they did. Adam and Eve, they didn't ask for forgiveness. They tried to hide from God. And we learned that, then when we study those stories, then we can understand more about ourselves. So now I understand why that is our first reaction when we do something wrong. We try to hide it. I don't know if it happened to you. I have this conversation with my son Ronen all the time. That let's say that he spilled his soda, and then he tried to hide it. He doesn't say anything. I find out, 5 days later when it's all sticky and stinky. I say, why didn't you say anything? Well, I thought you may be mad at me. Well, now I am mad. And then I have to tell him all the time, Look, let's make a deal. If you tell me right away when something happened, I promise you I won't get mad. Okay? And eventually, more often now than before, he's getting it. And when something happened, he will come telling me or my wife right away when he did something. But I don't like when he tried to hide it. And then the problem is even bigger. But this is not something new. We already learned it from Adam and Eve. So my point is, by reading the book of Genesis, we can understand a lot about our world, and we can understand a lot about ourselves as well. Very important, very important. Okay, any comments, any questions about this? Meanwhile, I want to have my coffee while it's still hot. Oh wow, yeah. Holly, you are absolutely right. And by the way, if there is anybody else in the chat, please say your name, say hello. We always like to know who is in the classroom, right? I know even though this is a virtual classroom, it's like a real classroom. When I don't know if it happens, you show up at the class and you look around and you see people never seen before, and then they leave at the end and you never learn their names. So it's good to know the names of people. So Holly, you're absolutely right. I'm gonna highlight this. Um, One of the things that, you know, as you mentioned, that Genesis sets the stage is about the concept of divisiveness within the Jewish people, where you will see from early on of siblings fighting between them, being jealous of each other, and I will say the entire book of Genesis is about that. Since Cain killed Abel, it was always like that. This rivalry between siblings. The only time that we see uh, that we see a little spark of a bright light that brings some hope about that is the very end of the book of Genesis, when for the first time all the brothers, remember, Jacob's sons, all of them are united. So the book of Genesis ends with hope that unity is possible. But other than that, uh, egos, especially egos fights, because one was the firstborn and the other one was jealous of the firstborn, and all that is a signature of the book of Genesis. Is absolutely, absolutely. Welcome, Glenn. Welcome, Glenn, to the class. Uh, yes, yes. All the things, because the the fish, birds, and animals, because they represent different realms. Because remember I mentioned at the beginning, I don't know if you were here at the beginning of the class, when I said that the book of Genesis start with duality, right? With the number two, with the letter bet in Hebrew, the number two. So basically what you have is the animals below, the animals above. So the waters and the sky, they represent different realms, and that's why they are created differently. And it goes, it was together with the study of the concept of duality at the beginning. Shelley Chochinov, what are you saying here? There is Shalom Garden House in Coop. Actually, Shalom Synagogue shares part of the building with the Coop. Okay, Temple Shalom. And why was that coming? I can't remember. You say something before? Shelley, what you said before about the Shalom Garden? Hmm. I don't know, Shelley. You have to explain to me the comment. Okay, okay. But now, welcome, Glenn. Again, great to put another face for somebody in the class. Let's continue with the next text. Now, oh, Brenda wanted it. Okay, so let's continue with Midrash Rabbah. The Torah says, "I was the tool of God's artistry." An architect who builds a palace does not do so on his own. He has scrolls and notebooks which he consults regarding how to place the rooms, where to set the doors. So it was with God. He looked into the Torah and created the world. Okay, so what I wanted to share with you here is the midrash that explains that the Torah preceded creation. The concept of the Torah, of the concept of commandments, preceded creation. So everything that we read in the Torah was already in God's mind when God created the world. So all the imperfection that we have and all the things that we know that we have to overcome, that they don't come as a surprise to God. We were created imperfect on purpose. On purpose. And this world, contrary to the next world, the afterlife, this world is the world to do. I like to call it the world to do. This is when we do. We do things. In the other world, we cannot do anymore. Whatever was done was done. Whatever was incomplete, there is nothing we can do about that. So we come to this world to work on our imperfections and to make ourselves better, improving the world in the process. And we come to this world also to get to know God in a different way. It's we get to discover God in this world. So we get to understand that everything followed a plan when God created this world. And that's when we always keep saying that God is in control because we believe that there is a plan that we don't understand. We cannot pretend that we understand God's plan. Some sense a little bit. People who undertake studies of Kabbalah, of Jewish mysticisms, they want to try to understand a little bit more of God's plan and how God relates to the world. But for most of us, that is actually very difficult to achieve. Thank you, Lori. Yeah, the world to do. And I read the comments of a rabbi once about, he was talking about the world, this is the world to do. Like I said, look, here in this world, for a few bucks, for a few dollars, I can buy tzitzit and fulfill the mitzvah of the tzitzit and to kiss the tzitzit and remember the commandments. In the other world, you can't. You can't fulfill mitzvot in the other world. It's different. This is the world where we do things. Okay? So some people say that part of the purgatory in the other world is the realization of everything that we didn't do. Now, because what happens is as soon as we die, as soon as we get rid of the physical limitations, all of a sudden, like this, boom, 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 our consciousness has no limits. So when we study things in this world, we study things in a linear way, one thing after the other. You can't study all at once. You have to study one thing after the other. It's when you read a book, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. You can, you can take a course on how to read books faster, but it doesn't mean that you can read the book all at once. Or I have this beautiful library behind me, but I have to go book by book. When we leave this world, all the knowledge comes to us in a flash, including everything that we didn't do, now that we can compare it with the master plan. So that brings some sort of disappointment and pain because there is nothing that we can do now. So that's why the more we can learn about what is expected from us and to do it, that's what we're supposed to be do as Jews for the rest of our lives. Get to know God, get to know God's plan, get to know God's expectations from us. For that you have to do lots of soul searching to figure it out what your mission is, right? And to do here. Because once we leave this world, there is nothing else we can do. Okay? So, yeah. And Brenda, you say we each have our own reality, and it's very difficult to always blend different realities. Yeah, but it's come. That's why studying is a good beginning to organize all that in your head. Yeah. Let's continue. Now, the Zohar will expand Midrash Rabbah, and it will say, God looked into the Torah and created the world. Man looks into the Torah and sustains the world. So, in other words, you know what happened? And I remember when I bought the house where we live now. We bought the house, and one of the things that the realtor that worked on our behalf requested from the realtor that worked on behalf of the people who were selling is, do you have the blueprints of the house? Why do you need the blueprints of the house? Well, because by having the blueprints that they were used when the house was built, it will make it easier for you to work in the maintenance of the house. For example, it will say there if the house was built on pillars and how many were used and what kind of wood, when the windows were installed, when the roof was installed, and all that information. It's very important. So if you have the blueprint of the world, now that you live in the world, then it will be way easier for you to be sure that you are doing what you're supposed to do to sustain the world and to keep it in good shape, in other words. But that's why the blueprint is so important in all these situations. And the Torah is the blueprint of the world, and the Torah is what we're supposed to study to make this place a better place, right? Yeah, absolutely, Laurie. I'm reading. To study Torah builds a palace and environment around us. Absolutely. Yeah. Now, let's go back to the Zohar, and I want to start to talk to you again. Going back to the very beginning. Remember what I mentioned about the Bereishit, the Genesis, started with the letter Bet. Okay, there is a beautiful midrash that is found both in the Talmud and the Zohar, almost identical text. There is the Zohar brings a little bit more details, but it's almost identical. About it's a midrash that helps us understand the difference between our world, our reality, and God's reality. Because the idea is we live in a world of duality, but at the same time we coexist with the world of the one, the world of God, and we keep trying elevating ourselves from the two to the one, from duality to the oneness. And that happens through observance of commandments, through prayers, through meditations, different ways. Okay? But this midrash, I like it a lot because at the same time reminds us that doesn't matter how high we can go, how close to God we can try to go, we are still living in this world. And there is something that you will see in a minute that sometimes even famous rabbis forgot. Listen to this. Beautiful midrash. The rabbis taught, for enter the pardes, literally the orchard. Okay? So you will see, I will explain after why they call it pardes. Okay? It's an acronym. Just be patient. Be patient. So, who were the four rabbis? Well, they were Ben Azai, Ben Zoma, Acher, and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said to them, when you come to the place of the pure marble stones, do not say water, water. For it is said, he who speaks untruth shall not stand before my eyes. Okay, a lot of things. This is something you have to understand, especially in the Zohar. There is lots of weird images that they're supposed to trigger specific things within ourselves, including feelings and other things, because there is nothing more inappropriate. Listen to this. There is nothing more inappropriate to speak about God than words, because words convey images. That's the way we understand things. When you're talking to people, even when I'm talking to you now, even though if you're not conscious about this, you are creating images in your head. Okay, that's how you can understand what I'm saying. And right out of the bat in the Ten Commandments, God is saying, you are not to create an image of myself. So how can you understand God without building an image? And when I say building an image, I'm not talking just about making God as a statue, but it also means not building mental images of God. Okay, so that's why I said it's very difficult to study all these things because we have to use words to understand each other, but words create images, which is not appropriate to talk to God. So you do the math. So we have to be very careful. Okay, we have to be very careful how we use language, and remember that language creates images, and we have to try to eliminate all kind of images that we make from God. Okay, but again, I insist, there is no other way, unfortunately, in this world. That's why the Torah will talk about the hand of God and the eye of God. God is listening to prayers. Well, God doesn't have eyes, God doesn't have an ear, so how can God listen? Well, we use the word listen, but you know what I mean. It's like a somehow for God, for the divine, to perceive what we say. Right? So we have to be very careful and make this conversion between the language we have and what we are really trying to say. Okay? So back to them. So that's why the Zohar will use all these kind of images, but you have to be very careful. It's not literal. It's not right. When I said, when you come to the place of pure marble stones, don't imagine pure marble stones. That's not the idea here. Okay. Do not say water, water, for it is said, he who speaks untruth shall not stand before my eyes. Okay. Now, what happened with these four rabbis? Ben gazed and died. So he went to the Pardes. He entered. And when he was there, I guess when he was in the place of pure marble stones, he looked at it and he died. Why? We'll see in a minute. Okay? So regarding him, the verse states, precious in the eyes of God is the death of his pious ones. Second rabbi, Ben Zoma, gazed and was harmed. In other words, he lost his sanity. He became cuckoo. He became cuckoo when he entered to the Pardes, when he was in front of the pure marble stones. Regarding him, the verse states, did you find honey? Eat as only much as you need, lest you be overfilled and vomited up. Acher, Rabbi Elisha ben Abuya. By the way, they call it Acher because he became a heretic, and we don't talk about him anymore because he quit Judaism. So this is like Harry Potter. You know who? We don't talk about that guy. So Rabbi Elisha ben Abuya, he was very famous. He was a scholar. He was a mystic. He had lots of power, just like Voldemort. Sorry, I said the name. So when he quit Judaism, he became a heretic. The rabbis called him Acher, the other. The other. We don't talk about him anymore by name. So Acher was there. He gazed. What happened? He cut down the plantings. He became a heretic. Rabbi Akiva was the only one who entered in peace and left in peace. How do we know this? Because he was the one who actually warned the others. He said, hey guys, I enter in peace, I exit in peace. This is what you have to do. When you go to that place, do not say water, water, because that is an untruth. Okay? So, just as I mean, a little explanation of what's going on here, Rabbi Akiva said to them, look, when you are in the place of pure marble stones, it's understood as the closest thing to God that you can get by being here on earth, by being alive in a material world. When you are there, in the presence of the Almighty One, do not say water, water. Why? Because there is no duality in that realm. So there is no water, water. The concept of water, water, the concept of the two is only here, not there. So when you are there, forget about duality. You have to learn a different reality. And that is when the other rabbis didn't fully understand in one way or another. Is that clear? So this is what it is. So uh, let's go quickly through this, and then I will explain in what way they failed. Okay. So the ancient Saba said to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi, Rabbi, holy lamp, surely the pure marble stones are the letter Yud. One, the upper Yud the, of the letter Aleph, the other one, the lower Yud of the letter Aleph. Here, there is no spiritual impurity. Here there is no spiritual impurity, only pure marble stones. And so there is no separation between one water and the other. The form of a single unity from the aspect of the tree of life, which is the Vav in the midst of the letter Aleph. In this regard it states, lest he put forth his hand, and if he take of the tree of life and eat and live forever. So again, lots of imagery here, right? This is the way Kabbalah sometimes is transmitted, because we want to first create an image and then try to erase it and but to keep the concept. Yes, the bank built of marble. Yeah. Okay, so what happened here? Let's go about the important thing here. The rabbi is talking about the letter Aleph. And let me explain the letter Aleph. This is one representation of the letter Aleph. Is the closest thing that I could find to the Midrash that we just read. Can you see the letter Aleph there? And I don't know if you know much of Hebrew. You will have, you see the upper, I put it in red, the two parts of the letter Aleph, they are very similar to the letter Yud. The letter Yud. So the letter Aleph consists technically on two letters Yud separated for a letter Vav. For a letter Vav. So the letter Aleph is the one that put it out, is a unity. Okay? Because it's the number one in the sense that we know it in this world. And this is also a Kabbalistic concept, that the number one that we know in this world is different from the number one that is related to God. That is a different number one, a number one that cannot be divided. The number one that we have here, as we can see in the letter Aleph, it already has the potential for division, because it represents two halves, okay, divided by two. Brenda, you said you are not seeing the Vav. It's in between the two Yud. It's like the Vav is vertical. This one is it's like a 45 degrees. 45 degrees. Any connection with missing Vav from Eliyahu? Name, but the letter Vav was added sometimes at the end. The Hu is part of the name of God. Yeah. Sometimes it's part of the name. It is part of the name of God. The Yud Hey Vav Hey. So this is the thing. What I say, when you go there is no division anymore. So when you are studying Kabbalah, you have to some kind get detached from duality, and it's something that is very difficult to do, because the whole world here is dual. Now let's see what happened. I wanted to tell you quickly, because we are running out of time, how each one of the rabbis failed when they undertook the Kabbalistic studies. In other words, when they entered the Pardes. Pardes, by the way, is an acronym that means Pshat, Remes, Drash, and Sod. Pardes. Those four things, Pshat, Remes, Drash, and Sod, are the four levels, the four ways that you can undertake Torah studies. You can study from the literal point of view, you can study from the midrashic point of view, you can study from the allegoric. So, you can study every story as an allegory, not as a story itself. And you can also study from the mystical point of view. Okay? So when you study when you master the four different ways, you can say that you mastered, or you enter the Pardes, all the levels of Torah. So the first one, it says, Shimon ben Azai, this is the one who gazed and died. What happened that he died? Well, listen to this, because we have to understand we have to understand who he was, Ben Azai. Who was Shimon Ben Azai? So, the Talmud talks about him. The Talmud says, with the passing of Ben Azai, diligent scholarship also ceased. Okay? So, number one, we know that he was a scholar. Not only that, he was a diligent scholar. What does it mean that he was a diligent scholar? Well, Rashi will explain this. So Ben Azai was diligently studying Torah day and night in the yeshiva. Day and night. Keep those words because it's very important to understand what happened here. Those are the key words, day and night. And then the Talmud again, now in Masechet Yevamot, it will say, what can I do? My soul so greatly desires Torah. Okay, so that Ben Azai said, what can I do? I'm here day and night. I cannot go home. I can do nothing else but study Torah. That's what he said during his life. So Ben Azai, I'm reading here, made this statement in response to the question put to him. Why had he never married? Which is a violation of both normal human desire as well as halacha. Okay? And he always said, the world can be perpetuated by others. I have more important, more pressing things to do, which is to study Torah. So what happened here, Brenda, so don't you see, that's why I have a coffee, to be able to absorb all this information without a headache. But what happened with this guy is that he was very successful, in fact, to understand the pure marble stones, to understand the oneness of God. He went that high. The problem is he never came down. He was there day and night. What the rabbis say, he was studying day and night. He never ate, didn't drink, didn't exercise, didn't do anything to take care of his body. And he died. But that's why God said, he, and let me read it for you here, the way God related to him. God said about Ben Azai, he said, precious in the eyes of God is the death of his pious one. Of course, from the point of view of God, he was with God all the time. So precious for me is this guy who was with me all the time, and now he came to me in the other realm, in the world to come, because that was all he was doing, Ben Azai, being close to God. But that's not the goal. That's why Rabbi Akiva mentioned at the beginning, okay? Mentioned at the beginning, water, but then you have to leave. That's what you study, you meditate, you connect with God, but then you have to come down again. Okay? Ben Azai failed to do that and died. The next one is Ben Zoma. This is a very interesting fellow, Ben Zoma. Very interesting fellow. Ben Zoma said, who is wise? Because I'm mentioning here some of the other teachings of this guy so we can understand better how his brain worked. Ben Zoma said, who is wise? He who learned from all people. As it says, from all those who taught me and gained understanding. And he also taught, who is strong? He who conquers his evil inclinations. As it is said, better is one slow to anger than a strong man, and one who rules over his spirit than a conqueror of a city. Who is rich? He who is satisfied with his lot. As he said, when you eat the toil of your hands, you are fortunate and it is good for you. You are fortunate, he explains, in this world, and it's good for you, he explained, in the world to come. Now, who is honor? He who honors others. As it is said, for those who honor me will I honor, and those who scorn me will be degraded. That is in Perkevot, beautiful teaching by Ben Zoma. Remember, Ben Zoma is the one who went cuckoo after he started to study Kabbalah. So, now this Rabbi Todros Abulafia, he explains, Ben Zoma gazed and went insane because he wasn't complete in his piousness and clarity as was Ben Azai. When he gazed at the brilliant light, the Pardes, it was more than his mind could handle, and he became psychotic, for he could not clearly understand that which he saw. What happened here, and this is a commentary of all the people that try to understand the life of Ben Zoma, when you read about his teachings, he was a little bit of a philosopher, a little bit of a rationalist, that he tried to understand the reason for everything and the practicality of everything, right? You can see about that. Try to, what is honor. You have to honor others, and there was lots of practicality things for us to improve in this world. And the thing is, he never let go of that. He tried to apply his logic they apply exclusively to this world, to try to understand the oneness of God. And that's not the way it works. That's what it says. It says here, and I will read it again, about him. It says, did you find honey? Did you discover the oneness of God? Eat as only much as you need, lest you be overfilled and vomited up. You cannot fill all that in our brains. The brains cannot comprehend logically everything that we learn in Kabbalah. There is much more than the intellectual learning of that. There are realms of feelings and other things. And he didn't it's almost like you have to let go a little bit of what you know that works right here in this world in order to understand better to God. So he couldn't put the two together. He tried and he went insane because it didn't work. That's not the way it works. Okay? And it looks like Rabbi Akiva was always also there before. That's why he warned him the same way he warned the previous rabbi as well. Once you go there, calm down. And to Ben Zoma, once you discover God, let go of your logic, your beloved logic that you use in this world, because that does not apply to God. He failed. He went insane. Now, the other one was Acher, Elisha ben Abuya, and he was the one. Let me read this quickly, and then we'll explain. Regarding Elisha ben Abuya, Acher, who was considered one of the greatest sages, yet he made a grievous error, this being the relationship between the Ichud Elyon, the supernal unity, and the Ichud Tachton, the lower unity. He thought that they were two separate ways of divine providence. He thought that the entire Torah and all the mitzvot are given only to those who have not yet perceived the Ichud Elyon, but only the Ichud Tachton. For he thought there is no king without a people who will serve God and do as God wishes. However, the one who, being able to perceive the Yichud Elyon, realizes that there is nothing in existence other than God, and that all is nullified before God. Therefore, there is no place for Torah and mitzvot, and there really is not any free will to merit reward of punishment. This is very interesting about Elisha ben Abuya. What happened here is, and this is very common among many Kabbalists, many people who study Kabbalah, that they believe, well, now that I discovered the real unity of God, now that I've seen the pure marble stones, I don't need Torah. I'm already here. Torah is for the losers. Sorry the language, but that's pretty much what some people think. For the ignoramus, that they discovered a different reality of the unity of God, the one that is down there. But now that I discovered the real one, I don't need Torah to be with God. I don't need Judaism. I'm just a Kabbalist. So that is right. It's not uncommon among Kabbalists to think like this. Unfortunately, that they abandon religion to undertake exclusively Kabbalistic studies. Do your research. You will see what I'm talking about here. Okay. And then the Vilna Gaon explains here, almost like answering to Elisha ben Abuya, why the two are necessary, right? The two realities. The Vilna Gaon says there is Pshat. Pshat is the literal meaning of the Torah. And there is Sod, and there is Kabbalah. There is both. There is Halacha, and there is Kabbalah. There is Jewish law, and there is Kabbalah. Yet, there is a Sod to Halacha, and there is a Pshat, and there is as there is a pshat, and there is a pshat to Kabbalah, so, and there is sod. So basically, they're all intermingled. You can separate the two and to say one is more important than the others. All things, be it halakha or Kabbalah, must be learned and applied and applied at the sod level. For one without the other means the nullification of both. Nowhere do we see this more than in the case of Elisha ben Abuya. So this is very important. Okay. Bubble Bath 7225. I don't know your name. You're talking about circumcision. Metzitza bepe. That is terrible. It is. It is terrible. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I don't know anybody who does it in these days, unless maybe in one of the ultra religious circles. But we all know that we are all very critical of those things. Okay. So yeah, these are the four levels of the pshat, the pardes that I mentioned for you. But we run out of time. We run out of time. So thank you everyone for tuning in to this Torah L'chaim edition, and thank you so much. And it's nice to be all together after all the Hagim, all the holidays are over. We can go back to our studying of the Torah. And remember, I will try to restream this class tonight at 8 p.m. Last week it didn't work. I don't know why. I got a blank screen on the software that restreamed this, but I will try again to see if it is a problem that I have on my end or not. So, but remember, I always restream the class same day at 8 p.m. in case that any of you missed part of the class. Okay? So thank you everyone, and hope to see you next week when we are going to study, God willing, Parshat Noah, the Noah's Ark and all those goodies. Okay? So thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And yeah, be safe. Bye everyone.